Listen, oh, gather round and let me tell you about Uncle Dike, the man who danced at every occasion. I mean every occasion. Wedding, dancing. Naming ceremony, dancing. Church Thanksgiving, dancing. And yes, even at funerals. The man danced like rhythm was his personal demon that refused to leave him alone. But what happened when he danced at the wrong person's burial and the dead man's spirit decided enough was enough? This story will make you laugh until your stomach hurts.
You see, in Umuofia village where I grew up, everybody, and I mean everybody, knew Uncle Dike. Not because he was rich, not because he was a chief or had any important title. No. People knew Uncle Dike because the man could not, would not, and did not know how to stay still when there was any sound even remotely resembling music. Bird chirping in the morning, Uncle Dike's foot is tapping. Church bell ringing for mass, his shoulders are moving side to side. Generator engine coughing to life. Full choreography with leg walk and everything. This man must be possessed, the villagers would whisper behind his back. What kind of spirit makes a grown man of 55 years behave like this? Like a child who drank too much palm wine.
Uncle Dike is my father's younger brother. Tall and well-built like an Iroko tree, standing strong and proud. He had this gap-toothed smile that would stretch from one ear to the other, and legs so long that when he danced, he looked like a grasshopper having a serious conversation with the ground. His real name is Dike Okonkwo, but everyone in the village just called him Dike Dance Dance, or sometimes Agba Egu, the dancing elder.
Now me, I'm Joshua, his nephew. My parents sent me to live with Uncle Dike in the village when I was 14 so I could attend the community secondary school. They thought living with my uncle would teach me discipline and hard work. What they didn't know was that I would get a PhD in embarrassment instead. Every single morning, and I'm talking about 5 a.m. when even the roosters were still deciding whether to crow or not, I would wake up to the sound of Uncle Dike in the compound doing what he called morning dance exercise. Joshua boy, wake up and come dance with your uncle. Exercise the body. Wake up the spirit. Shake away the sleep demons. I would drag myself out of bed, rubbing my eyes, only to find Uncle Dike in the compound wearing nothing but his wrapper tied around his waist, doing some kind of dance that looked like he was trying to fight invisible mosquitoes while simultaneously dodging imaginary stones being thrown at him from all directions. Uncle, it's 5 a.m., I would groan. Nobody is even playing music. Music? He would stop mid-twist and look at me like I had just said the most foolish thing in the world. Who needs music, my boy? I have music in my blood, in my bones, in my soul. The ancestors put rhythm in me before I was born. Now come, join me. 1, 2, 3. Step, step, turn. And he would continue his dance, making his own beat. Pom, 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 bim. Pom, 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 bim. The man was literally beatboxing while dancing at 5 a.m. in the village with no shame whatsoever. The neighbors would open their windows and shout, "Dike, have you no mercy? Some of us want to sleep." But Uncle Dike would just wave at them cheerfully and shout back, "Good morning to you too. Join me. Dancing is good for the body, better than lying down like a corpse." That word corpse, if only he knew then what would happen later because of that word and his dancing. But I'm getting ahead of myself. You see, Uncle Dike didn't just dance at home. Oh no, that would be too normal,
too contained, too reasonable. Uncle Ndike danced everywhere, and I mean everywhere with capital letters and exclamation mark. One time, we went to the market to buy yam and plantain. Just a simple market errand. But as we walked past a shop selling radios, one of the radios was playing high life music. Before I could blink, Uncle Ndike had dropped his basket and his legs started moving. "Uncle, please, not here. People are watching." Let them watch. He was already doing some kind of leg walk that made him look like a chicken trying to cross a hot surface. Good music must not be wasted, my boy. It is a sin to hear rhythm and not respond. People gathered around, some laughing, some clapping, some just shaking their heads. The radio seller didn't know whether to be happy for the free entertainment or annoyed that this dancing man was blocking his shop. Uncle Ndike danced for a full 5 minutes before he finally stopped, picked up his basket, and continued shopping like nothing had happened. "You see that?" he said to me, breathing heavily. "That is how you live life, with joy." "Uncle, that is how you live life with shame," I muttered, but he just laughed.
Another time, and this one still makes me want to disappear into the ground, we went to church. It was a normal Sunday service. The choir was singing, people were clapping respectfully, and the pastor was preparing to preach. Then the choir started singing Ekele Diri Chineke, a beautiful solemn praise song. Uncle Dike, sitting right there in the third row, suddenly stood up. I thought maybe he wanted to go outside, but no. The man started dancing right there in the middle of the service. Not just a gentle sway like other people. No. Full performance. Arms waving, legs stepping, hips moving, head nodding. The pastor stopped talking. The choir stopped singing. The entire church, and I'm talking about 300 people, turned to look at Uncle Dike, who was now doing something that looked like a combination of cultural dance and aerobic exercise. "Brother Dike," the pastor called out gently. "Brother Dike, please sit down." "Pastor, the spirit has moved me," Uncle Dike shouted back, still dancing. "When the spirit moves, who am I to remain still? Even David danced before the Lord." "Yes, but David danced with the music, not after the music has stopped." Uncle Dike finally noticed that everyone was quiet and staring at him. He looked around, smiled that gap-toothed smile, and slowly sat down. "Sorry, Pastor, the reading was just too sweet. I wanted to crawl under the bench and die." After church, people came to me saying, "Joshua, your uncle is special." Special was the polite word they used. The not so polite words I heard in whispers were mad, cursed, and touched in the head.
But the most embarrassing incident, the one that led to the main story I want to tell you, happened at a wedding. Chief Maduka's daughter was getting married and the whole village was invited. It was a big ceremony with a live band, lots of food and plenty of drinks. Uncle Dike was invited, of course, because despite his dancing problem, people still liked him. He was a good man with a good heart, just a man who couldn't control his legs when there was music. The wedding started normally. The band was playing, people were dancing in the designated dancing area, and Uncle Dike was right there in the middle, dancing like his life depended on it. So far, so good. Nobody was surprised. This was expected. But then the band took a break. Complete silence. Time for the pastor to bless the couple. Everyone sat down quietly. The pastor opened his Bible and began to speak. "Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today." And that was when we heard it. From somewhere in the compound, a goat started bleating. "Ma ah ah ah, ma ah ah ah." Now, you have to understand something about Uncle Dike. The man could find rhythm in anything. Bird sounds, car horns, people sneezing, rain falling on zinc roof, anything. So, when that goat started bleating in a somewhat rhythmic pattern, Uncle Dike's body began to move. First, just a little shoulder shake, then a foot tap. Then before anyone could stop him, he was up and dancing to the sound of a goat.
Ma went the goat. Step, step, turn went Uncle Dike. Ma shimmy, shimmy, shake. The pastor stopped talking. The bride started crying, not tears of joy, but tears of frustration. The groom looked like he wanted to fight somebody, and Chief Maduka stood up, his face red with anger. Dike, he shouted, sit down this instant. Uncle Dike froze mid-dance, looked around at all the angry faces and realized what he had done. He sat down so fast, he almost fell off his chair. After the wedding, Chief Maduka pulled Uncle Dike aside. I was standing nearby, pretending not to listen, but hearing everything. Dike, I know you are a good man, Chief Maduka said, trying to control his anger. But this dancing of yours has become too much. There is a time for everything. Time to dance and time to stay still. You cannot dance at every occasion. I'm sorry, Chief. It was the goat. The rhythm was... The goat, Dike? You were dancing to a goat? Uncle Dike had no answer to that. I'm warning you now, Chief Maduka continued. If you ever dance at an inappropriate occasion again, especially at a funeral, the elders will have to intervene. Do you understand? Uncle Dike nodded solemnly. I understand, Chief. I will control myself. But you see, telling Uncle Dike to control his dancing was like telling a fish to not swim or a bird to not fly. It was in his nature. It was who he was. And we would all soon learn that some lessons have to be learned the hard way. 3 months after the wedding incident, news came to the village that one of the elders, Elder Obi, had died. Elder Obi was a respected man, very serious, very traditional. He was the head of the village council and a man who believed in order, discipline, and proper behavior. Everyone knew that his funeral would be a solemn, dignified affair. No noise, no dancing, no foolishness.
The night before the funeral, Uncle Dike's wife, Auntie Zina, called me aside. Joshua, tomorrow at the funeral, I need you to watch your uncle. Watch him? How? Stay beside him throughout the funeral. If you see his legs starting to move, step on his foot. If you see his shoulders starting to shake, hold them down. If you see his head starting to nod, tap him hard. Do you understand? But Auntie, Uncle Dike promised Chief Maduka he would behave. Auntie Zina just looked at me with tired eyes. Joshua, I have been married to that man for 25 years. Your uncle's promises about not dancing last only as long as there is no rhythm. And at a funeral, even if there is no music, he will find rhythm in people's crying, in footsteps, in the digging of the grave. So please, watch him. The next day, we went to Elder Obi's compound for the funeral. The whole village was there, dressed in black and dark colors. The mood was heavy, somber. People were crying quietly. The body was laid out in the compound, wrapped in white cloth, waiting to be buried. I stayed very close to Uncle Dike, watching him like a hawk. So far, he was doing well. His face was serious, his body was still, and he was paying respect properly. I started to relax. Maybe this time would be different. Maybe Uncle Dike had finally learned. The pastor began the funeral service. He prayed, he preached, he talked about how Elder Obi was a good man who lived a full life. People were crying, especially Elder Obi's children and grandchildren. The professional mourners, yes, we hired women whose job was to cry loudly at funerals, were wailing dramatically. And that was when it started. You see, these professional mourners, they didn't just cry, they cried with rhythm. It went like this. Iya, iya, elder has gone. Iya, iya, death has taken him. Iya. I saw it happen in slow motion.
Uncle Dike's eyes widened. His foot started tapping, just a little tap, 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 in time with the morning cries. I stepped on his foot, hard. He stopped, looked at me. I shook my head firmly. He nodded and stayed still. But then the pallbearer started to carry the coffin to the grave. And as they walked, because coffins are heavy and they had to walk slowly, their feet made a sound on the ground. Thump, 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 thump. Uncle Dike's shoulders began to move. Just a tiny shake, left, right, left, right. I grabbed his shoulders and held them still. He looked at me pleadingly, but I held firm. The coffin was being lowered into the grave now. People were crying louder. The mourners were at full volume. Iya, Eldao, Iya, Eldao. Uncle Dike was sweating. His whole body was trembling like he was fighting an internal battle. His legs were shaking. His hands were twitching. He looked like someone trying not to sneeze during a moment of silence. Uncle, please, I whispered. Remember what Chief Maduka said. This is Elder Obi's funeral, the most serious man in the village. Please. I'm trying, my boy, he whispered back, his voice strained. I'm trying so hard, but the rhythm, can you not hear it? The crying has a beat. The footsteps have a pattern. It's like the whole funeral is a song. Uncle, no! But it was too late. Someone started playing a funeral dirge on a flute. It was meant to be slow and sad, but it had a melody. And melodies, as everyone knew, were Uncle Dike's greatest weakness. His body went rigid, his eyes rolled back slightly, and then, like a dam breaking, Uncle Dike began to dance. At a funeral, at Elder Obi's funeral, the most serious, most traditional funeral in the village's recent history, Uncle Dike was dancing. But this wasn't his normal dancing. Oh no, this was something else entirely. He was dancing like a man possessed, like demons were fighting inside his body and using his limbs as weapons. His arms were flailing, his legs were kicking, his head was jerking from side to side. He looked like he was simultaneously dancing, fighting, and having some kind of spiritual experience. Uncle! I tried to grab him, but he spun away from me. The entire funeral stopped. The flute player's mouth fell open and the flute fell to the ground. The pastor dropped his Bible. The mourners stopped crying mid-wail. Even the people lowering the coffin froze and stared. Everyone was watching Uncle Dike dance around the open grave like a man who had lost his mind. Chief Maduka stood up, his face twisted in fury. Dike, have you no shame? This is a funeral. A funeral! But Uncle Dike couldn't stop, or wouldn't stop. He was in some kind of trance, his body moving to rhythms only he could hear. He danced closer and closer to the open grave, his long legs stepping around it in some kind of bizarre ritual dance. And then, and I swear to you this is true, I saw it with my own two eyes. The wind suddenly stopped. The air became cold. And from inside the grave, we all heard a voice. A deep, angry voice. Dike! Everyone froze. Even Uncle Dike stopped dancing mid-step, one leg in the air.
Dike Okonko! The voice came again from inside the grave. And now we knew it was Elder Obi's voice. The dead man was speaking. People started screaming and running, but nobody got far because we were all too terrified to move properly. We just stood there, trembling, watching the grave. All my life, Elder Obi's voice boomed from the grave. I stood for order. I stood for tradition. I stood for respect. And you, Dike, you dare dance on my grave before I'm even fully buried? Uncle Dike's teeth were chattering so hard I could hear them from where I stood. Elder, I didn't mean... The rhythm was... Silence! The voice thundered. Since you love dancing so much, since you cannot control yourself even at a funeral, let me teach you a lesson you will never forget.
The ground around the grave began to shake, and then from inside the grave, mist started rising. Dark, thick mist that swelled and twisted until it formed shapes, and these shapes began to dance. But not normal dancing. They were dancing the dance of the dead, a traditional dance that our ancestors performed, but one that the living were never meant to see. The spirits were moving in ways that defied nature, their bodies bending and twisting at impossible angles, their feet barely touching the ground. "Now, Daike," Elder Obi's voice commanded, "dance with the spirits. Dance with the spirits. Since you want to dance so badly, dance!" Uncle Daike tried to run, but his legs wouldn't obey. Instead, they started moving on their own, mimicking the spirit's dance. His body twisted and contorted, his limbs bent in ways that made everyone watching gasp in horror. He was crying and screaming, I'm sorry, I'll never dance again, please." But the spirits didn't stop. They danced faster, and Uncle Daike was forced to match their pace. Sweat was pouring down his face. His wrapper was coming loose. He looked like he was going to collapse, but his body kept dancing, dancing, dancing.
The whole village was watching in terror. Some people were praying, some were calling on the ancestors. Auntie Zina was crying, "Please, Alda, forgive him. He's a fool, but he's my fool. Please." Finally, after what felt like hours, but was probably only 10 minutes, the dancing stopped. The spirits dissolved back into mist, and the mist sank back into the grave. Uncle Dike collapsed on the ground, gasping for air, his body soaked with sweat. Elder Obi's voice came one last time, softer now, but still stern. "Dike, I have given you a gift. From this day forward, you will know when and where to dance. The spirits have touched you. Use this lesson wisely." Then silence. Complete silence. Even the birds had stopped chirping. We quickly finished the burial after that. Nobody said a word. We lowered the coffin, covered the grave, and performed the final rites in record time. Everyone wanted to leave that compound as fast as possible. Uncle Dike could barely walk. We had to support him all the way home. He was trembling and muttering to himself, "I saw them. I saw the ancestors. They danced with me. Oh God, they danced with me." For 3 days after the funeral, Uncle Dike was bedridden. He had a fever and kept having nightmares about the dancing spirits. Auntie Zina called the herbalist who came and performed some cleansing rituals. He was touched by the ancestors. They have taught him a lesson, but they have also given him a gift. From now on, he will understand the sacred nature of rhythm. He will know when to dance and when to be still. We didn't really believe it until Uncle Dike recovered and we saw the change.
The very next Sunday, we went to church. The choir sang the same song they had sung before, Ekele Diri Chineke. In the past, Uncle Chike would have jumped up and started dancing immediately. But this time, he sat quietly, his foot tapping gently to the beat, but his body remained still. He was smiling, enjoying the music, but he didn't stand up. He didn't disrupt the service. After church, people came to him in wonder. "Dike, what happened? The music was so sweet, but you didn't dance?" He smiled his gap-toothed smile. "Oh, I danced, but I danced inside, in my spirit. The ancestors taught me that not all dancing has to be with the body. Some rhythms are meant to be felt in the soul." The next major test came a month later when there was another wedding in the village. Uncle Dike attended and we all watched nervously. The band started playing. People filled the dancing area. Uncle Dike stood up and my heart sank. Here we go again. But no, he walked calmly to the dancing area, found a spot and began to dance. And oh, you should have seen it. It was beautiful, controlled, graceful, appropriate. He danced like a man who understood the music, who respected the occasion, who knew the difference between celebration and chaos.
People were amazed. Dike, what happened to you? You're dancing like a normal person now. He just laughed. I finally learned the most important lesson about dancing. It's not about how much you dance or how often you dance. It's about dancing at the right time, in the right place, with the right spirit. From that day on, Uncle Dike became known throughout the village, not as Dike Dance, but as Dike the Wise Dancer. People started inviting him specifically to dance at their celebrations because they knew he would bring good energy without bringing chaos. He still danced every morning. That never changed. But now he did it with purpose, with control, with understanding. The ancestral dance had transformed him. Years later, when I was much older and visiting the village during holidays, I asked him about that day at Elder Obi's funeral. Uncle, do you think Elder's spirit really spoke to you, or was it just fear and guilt that made you hear things?
He looked at me with those wise eyes that had seen the world beyond this one and smiled. Joshua, my boy, does it matter whether it was Elder's actual spirit or just my own conscience finally speaking loud enough for me to hear? The lesson was real. The change was real. Before that day, I danced because I couldn't help myself. After that day, I danced because I choose to. That is the difference between being controlled by your passion and controlling it. Uncle Dike lived for many more years after that, bringing joy to the village with his dancing at weddings, naming ceremonies, and festivals. But never again at a funeral. Never again at an inappropriate time. And when he finally died, peacefully in his sleep, at the ripe old age of 83, the entire village came to his funeral. And you know what they did? They danced. They danced a beautiful, respectful, joyful celebration of his life. Because Uncle Dike had taught them that even in death, there is rhythm. Even in sorrow, there can be movement. Even in endings, there is a kind of dance. The pastor said during his eulogy, Dike showed us that life itself is a dance. Sometimes fast, sometimes slow, sometimes joyful, sometimes solemn, but always a dance. He learned to hear the rhythm of life itself, and he taught us to do the same. As we lowered Uncle Dike's body into the ground, I swear I felt a gentle breeze, and in that breeze, I heard something like laughter. And I smiled because I knew Uncle Dike was finally dancing with the ancestors, dancing with the spirits, dancing in that eternal rhythm where there are no inappropriate times, no wrong occasions, no shame. Just pure, eternal, joyful dancing. And somewhere in the spirit world, I believe Elder Obi looked at Uncle Dike, shook his head with a slight smile and said, "Now you can dance, you foolish man. Now you can dance forever."
So besties, here's what Uncle Dike taught us. Know when to do your thing and when to stay calm. Doing what you love without control, that's just asking for wahala.
Thank you for watching to the end. Can't wait to see you in the next story. Bye!